Well, welcome to another edition of King Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Andy King, the show with real views, real news, and real talk. King Talk Tuesdays airs every Tuesday at 7 p.m. live, but we're doing something the second time around. Tonight, we want to welcome you back again to the 4 on News 24. And yes, again, I'm your host, Andy King, with 4 dynamic minds, and we're going to chat it up and talk about what's going on around New York City, the USA, and the state of New York. Every Tuesday, we're here, and every alternate Tuesday, we'll have the 4. We're coming live on Millennial TV News 24, and as well as our Facebook and our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We also air at 9 p.m. on Optimal Channel 70, as well as Fios Channel 2136. You know what I always say, right? People pay attention to people who participate. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor that King Talk Tuesdays is airing the 4 right now. And if you have a thought, a comment, or a concern, you can email us at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. Again, our email address is kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com. You know, we'll welcome you again to the second time we're doing the 4 here on Millennial 24 and chatting it up. And I want to introduce you tonight to our guest that we have here tonight. And I'm excited about it because I want to hear what these bright, intelligent minds are going to offer on what's happening in today's society. Well, just to kick us off, you know, we're starting off with someone who understands who and how MAGA lives. And we want to welcome back to King Talk Tuesdays, Mr. Conservative, Mr. DP, Dion Powell. Welcome back to the 4.
Thank you, Mr. King. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And for the first time, we want to bring somebody in who understands what it is to have a good glass of barley. Welcome, Joyce Farley, here to the King Talk to the 4. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Farley. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And of course, every show, you can't have anything on the scene without a queen. We're glad to have for the first time to the 4. Welcome our good sister Lucille Martin.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you, guys.
Welcome. Well, you know, I want everybody just first to introduce themselves because this is the second time we're doing the 4, and we're going to talk about some things and make some fun and hit it right hard because King Talk is a show that gives real views, real news, and real talk. We're not scared to talk about it because we're going to be about everything we talk about tonight. So stay tuned and get ready for the ride. So first, Sister Farley, talk us a little about what do you do and how you do it when you do it.
Oh, okay. So my name is Dr. Joyce Farley. I am an adjunct professor at Lemoyne Owen College in Memphis, Tennessee. So I am teleworking from my home and teaching African American studies online to freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and sprinkle of seniors. I have been teaching in the university setting for about 4 or 5 years now. Prior to that, I was a journalist for a number of years. Working in TV stations and different news organizations across the country, and I decided to make a mid-course adjustment. I'm no stranger to doing broadcasts and being in front of the camera or being on radio, so I very much feel at home. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. Now I can go rest. No, you can do the show there.
Well, you just let me know. Any point in time, you come down with something, you have a little contagion, let me know.
Okay, well, I was a point guard playing basketball. I know how to pass the ball.
Okay, I was a center, so I know how to take it.
Okay, all right, there you go. Well, we talking about Mr. Conservative, who always gives us some wisdom. Dion Powell, welcome back again. What are some introductory words you'd like to share on the 4?
Well, I'm District Leader Dion Powell here in the 78th District of the Bronx, and people like me do exist. We may all be Black, but it doesn't mean that our thoughts can't be diverse.
Love it. And of course, the Queen herself is joining us on the scene. Sister Martin.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I am a social worker. I was born in Mount Vernon. I'm from the Bronx. I work in the Bronx, and I am in my day-to-day work working in our communities with those that are most in need, and just very happy to be here today so that I can talk a bit about that and how these topics impact the communities that I serve.
Money earned in Mount Vernon, huh?
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay, I feel you. Now, they only got one hospital there, so was it Monty at the time, or was it Mount Vernon?
Mount Vernon Hospital.
Okay, well, you know what? I can tell you something. That's when my mom and daddy had me too.
Look at that.
Many moons ago. All right, now, well, welcome. So, listen, let's jump into it right now because today there's a whole lot happening in the world. There's a transitioning happening. We start talking about power and government and how the world is starting to see the United States different because there is a man who's sitting at the head of the table named Donald J. Trump, our 47th president. Now, there's a lot of people who got a little bit annoyed, upset, didn't know what to do with President Trump being the president again. But however, he got in there with a mandate, went in the electoral and as well as the popular vote. So there was something going on in the air that people said, we got to let that stuff go that was happening for the last 4 to 7 years, whatever that looks like for you. So let's talk about that, what's been going down, because the president has offered a number of executive orders, actually 26 orders that he, on day one, executive orders that he put into place and started changing the landscape of what America is going to look like and how America is going to operate. One of the first things I want y'all to talk to me about is one of the big things that are happening today. You're talking about, as a matter of fact, I got the border. You know, he put in executive orders to make emergency at the southern border. You know, and there's a crisis that the troops are no longer going to have a hindrance in getting in there to do what they have to do. As someone who's covered stuff like this, talk a little about what do you think this executive order is going to do to have an impact across the country when they protect the southern border, or if they are, they're protecting it.
So having lived in Phoenix twice, working for 2 different news organizations, Gannett and the E.W. Scripps Company at KNXV ABC 15, I have covered more specifically with Arizona Republic under Gannett. I covered DACA when it was repealed, and I have never seen so many terrified faces, so many questions on what now, what if, how do I, will I stay, will I go, will my do, if I take a pause now because of DACA being rescinded, will I be able to continue my degree, when it becomes reenacted again, and what really took me back as both a journalist, a Black woman, and most importantly, a human, I have never seen such vitriol lodged at people who are innocent. And I think what most people forget is that New Mexico, Arizona, a good portion of California, Texas, a portion of Louisiana, and more so the America's, what's considered America's homeland, Oklahoma and Arkansas, were once Mexico. And so it's not necessary, it's when they are making this pilgrimage back to what I consider ancestral homelands, that's exactly what it is. It's a gravitational pull to go back to what was once was and what is. And there's a lot of misnomers, misconceptions, a lot of preconceived notions about minorities, about land, about this concept of home. Home is much more than just, something that you just slap on, a piece of mail that you send through snail mail to the postal service. It is something that is innate. And so there's a lot of conversations that are being had, but the biggest conversation is that a lot of what's going on is history repeating itself in so much. People coming back to what was once their homeland and claiming it as theirs. The other thing is like with all of this racial, unrest, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, you need someplace safe enough to raise your children, to breathe without, persecution or threat of violence or whatever the case may be. And so there's a lot to be said there. What really scares me and terrifies me is what happened in Newark last week, where there was an unwarranted ICE raid, and they locked up not only quote unquote illegals, but they locked up U.S. citizens. And one of the citizens happened to be retired military, and he let loose. Newark Mayor Ras Baraka came out and definitely had a very fiery statement, as well as Senator Cory Booker and a couple of other state and local politicians, and some NGOs and nonprofits. But it's not just a conversation that can be had in a vacuum without considering greater issues. Yes, and the biggest one, of course, is humanity, because, we consider ourselves not to be a Christian nation, but yet we throw the Bible into everything. And we, what is very clear is that the focus is on the least of these. God's focus, or Jesus's focus in the New Testament, has always been the focus of the migrant, the child, the elderly. It's not so much, everybody else who has a socioeconomic means to do and to improve. It's those without a voice, those without a say, those without power.
Well, that's how she started us off, and she dropped it like it's hot. All right, we thank you for that, good doctor. Dion, we know where Making America Great slogan, logo means, and it energized a lot of folks to vote for Donald Trump. We call it for what it is. These executive orders that have been signed, we're talking about the border itself. When he made it a crisis, it was already a crisis, but calling it an emergency, so taking emergency action to try to secure it. Your thoughts on what you think this executive order means, and where can it lead to help America or not help America?
Well, let's talk about what is already done. Right now, on the other side of the coin, human trafficking has gone down.
Mhm.
They've actually found thousands of children that went missing off the docket.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? And right now, since his hand even still didn't touch the Bible, by the way, before the November, people actually deporting themselves. And then the next thing is all these other countries that they're coming from, Mexico and Colombia, they actually, are taking them back in great droves. So as you can see on the other side, things are actually getting greater. And on top of that, some of these budget allocations that are earmarked for that area
Mhm.
are actually being reappropriated to where they need to be. And then on top of that, the backlog of immigrants, not migrants, there's a difference, that are downtown at federal ICE, they actually getting processed every Friday. They've expedited for their citizenship. So that's the other side, which I think is great.
Okay, well,
Are we
you
allowed
want
to
to
push back? Because
Well,
I have
well, we
questions
want
that
to-
need answers.
Well, we definitely want to give some questions before we bring
Okay.
Sister Lucille in the mix, because as a social worker who works to help families and children every day who are going through whatever crisis they could be experiencing, when we have the border crisis that we have, and there's been a new tone set of how to stabilize the entry and the exit out of our country. What do you think that what kind of effects that these executive order has on families?
I think that the reality is that it creates fear in these communities, and people who already are looking to find a way, right? People come here for opportunities. So I feel like we have the opportunity to respond,
Mhm.
right, in a way that is not necessarily going to be a waste of the allocation of those funds, right? Because the reality is that people have this didn't just start. People have been migrating to this country from all over the world, and we could put the same funds and resources into creating a plan that is sustainable, and does still support people as they make these transitions, even encouraging people to have more avenues to migrate here in a different manner, if that's truly the concern, right? Because it's interesting that when people are migrating here from other parts of the world, and they may also be undocumented, but they may be something other than Black or Latino. We don't focus on those communities. Here in the Bronx, we have a lot of communities of people from all over the world, and we have similar issues just in terms of immigration status. That's not a hot topic. We're only talking about the one border and the one type of people that are predominantly coming from there, which are people that are Black and Latino. And so when it comes to other communities, whether it's people from different parts of Europe or different parts of the world, just generally Asia, things of that sort, what about the people in those communities that are undocumented? What about the fact that, obviously those people are being given opportunities and they're not being targeted in these ICE raids? So what is it really about?
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the borders because there is a northern border, there is a southern border, and there is conversation that was had with the governor coming home for making sure that the northern border is secure, so they don't lose out, or there may be some tariffs hit from that would hit Canada. But we're going to drop into that a little later. You had a question that you want to put on the table in regards when Brother Powell was speaking in regards of now, as I understand, there was 300 children that was found that were lost, that were brought back to the
But these
identified.
so-called lost children, are they as a result of the initial border crisis when we were separating parents from children and they're quote unquote now found?
Mhm.
Because as we know, there's a lot of children and families that were broken apart and have not yet to be reunited as a result of that initial border crisis when you're separating children from family. So much so that it was the actual focus of a Law and Order SVU episode. I don't know if you guys
I did see it. I did see it. Yes, yes.
Okay, so yes. But then my other question is, where is this data coming from? Because we know that, at least from an empirical and qualitative point of view, that data sometimes can be skewed, and there's always that little asterisk or that caveat or addendum that says FYI within a margin of error of 3 or 5% or something to the extent. So I have questions. Who's reporting this information? Where exactly is it coming? And the reason why I take really serious hesitancy with accepting information as fact is considering that I believe it was yesterday, Dr. Phil was supposedly interviewing some of these migrants or, quote unquote illegals, migrants, whatever the language they use. But it was highly problematic and suspect because here you have a TV personality who was interviewing people who are being, captured in this ICE raid, and he's sticking up the camera in their face, supposedly. This is what CNN was reporting because the Attorney General, who is a Black man, I'm drawing a blank on his name, was interviewed on CNN about how problematic it is, and then the constitutional landmine that it opens as a result of him being there. And he really has no legal say-so in being there, or really no legal reason for being there. So I have questions. These are the questions that I have and the answers that I'm seeking.
Right. Well, you make a valid point on that whole process of where these numbers are coming from, where these children lost from before break. And I do want to remind our viewers, and I'm again, as we do on King Talk, we keep it real, not that we take this position or that position, but if we are talking about these children that were lost, they were under the last administration. It wasn't under this administration. This administration only been in there for what, a week? Right. So, and this administration is reporting, hey, we found these children, and it would have been nice. Wow. It would have been nice if the last administration could have figured out how we found them. But we have a lot that we want to talk about, because some of these orders were such as even the catch and release. How do he wants to end the catch and release program? What was happening? What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Powell?
Well, the catch and release is a criminal justice piece, I believe, that goes back to bear reform and all these human rights everybody has when they step foot in the soil. So that being said, sometimes it'd be a good thing, but right now it seems it's being exploited, which is bad. So that's just a bit on the surface. Right.
Well, we are at the point in King Talk Tuesdays. Time does fly. I tell you, we're going to be zooming through some topics, but we're going to have to take a break because someone mentioned Jesus Christ earlier, and this show doesn't do anything if it isn't for the blessing and the strength of the Most High in Christ. So we're going to be right back on the 4 on News 24 after this message from Israel United in Christ.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We're pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure y'all subscribe. Stop playing games.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We're pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure y'all subscribe. Stop playing games.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We're pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure y'all subscribe. Stop playing games.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the 4 corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We're pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure y'all subscribe. Stop playing games.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the four corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the four corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Stop playing games.
Shalom Israel, Most High in Christ bless. Scan that QR code that you will see on the screen. Because guess what? We trying to push this truth toward the four corners of the earth. Let's push this truth toward the four corners of the earth, man. Stop playing games.
Make sure you subscribe to all our channels. We pushing the truth. Make sure you subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Stop playing games.
Hey, welcome back to the forum on King Talk Tuesdays. I'm here with a number of distinguished personalities and strength and minds who got something to say. But we started out as the forum, but we've been joined by someone who tries to keep it on track. And we want to welcome to the first time to the four, brother Naquan Hallback. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us tonight. So we're just going to keep it live with the five now. All right. So I hope y'all are ready to talk and chat it up. Before we had to take a break, we were jumping in talking about the southern border of the United States. We know there's a northern border as well that people are coming in throughout from different countries as well. But we know the focus has been on the southern border according to the media and everything that's been happening. Now, we understand there are some people and families that might have got caught up in the web of stuff. But I want you to talk to us a little bit about some of the folks who have come across, who have done the wrong thing that has been an inspiration for people to vote differently and the president be able to put these executive orders in place.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the message that is portrayed, right, it's done intentionally to create fear. And it is a matter of how we choose to allocate these funds, because major money is being spent. And if there were programs in place to better support individuals, some people, if they are committing crimes, and if they do not have, the proper things in place, those people, yes, those people need to be handled in a certain manner. However, if people are looking for opportunities and they're being sent cross country on buses and then just dumped into streets and overpopulating areas, that's not a sustainable plan. Mm-hmm. So if they are here, and if we are going to use our funds to address that population, I just think that there are more person-focused approaches that we could be utilizing. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the issue is that it's easy to throw around these things that sound good, but what is it based on? Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we aren't just repeating something we saw on social media, right. A quick video we watched on Instagram, or some of these media settings, right, that are more focused on sending that one message as opposed to being honest in what's actually going on. So,
honesty, that's a good question. We want to bring you into the conversation, Brother Hallback. In regards, we're talking about the southern border, and she just mentioned about how do we have a real conversation on the truths. What are facts and what are facts? What do you say to the parents or the families who have been hurt by people who are in this country illegally?
Well, for starters, for the families who've been hurt by the government?
Well, people who have been coming to this country who have not been vetted. We know there's a number of folks, and I give you, just for instance, ICE made an arrest early this morning in the Bronx. And the gentleman that they arrested is out of CBS on Ogden Avenue and DeVoe Terrace, and another one on Creston. They say he's a gang member that they took down. He was on a warrant for burglary, menacing charges in Aurora, that whole group that took over that complex, that the gang. But he was hiding out in the sanctuary city of New York. after committing all of this in Colorado. And when they find him, what do we say about that process? Is it right? Is it fair? Or are we still fighting for what? Who?
I mean, well, it's a part of the justice system, so it depends on what aspect you speak from. It's so much of a fluctuation in diversity. It's hard to pinpoint where the issue really stands and what fight to really fight. So we must and that's why I think that is so generalized and it affects people in different ways. So for to speak towards that issue specifically, I think that it's just justice. I mean, if he's doing wrong, then by all rights, he's gonna get in trouble. He's gonna get arrested, or he's gonna go through his due process. So I mean, I think that the order for Trump to call in ISIS on everyone is kind of broad. It's kind of broad. It kills most of what the issue or where the issues may stem from. However, it also affects so many innocent and so many people or families who's really actually here to do right, who actually had to flee from horrible situations and maybe even facing death, and now forced to go back to those situations, which is not fair. So it's kind of like a catch-22 because he's making it so broad that it's like, all right, well, I don't care about this situation. This is what it is. This is how we're gonna fix our situation, and that's it. So, but is it right? That's debatable.
So I want to ask you, DP. You heard what Brother Hallback had to share. Donald Trump, the President Trump, has made a declaration. He said it during his whole campaign that he was going to put America first. How do we address everyone's questions or concerns about what it means to put America first?
Well, number one, don't let them play you on your emotions. And there, it's sad. They just put a migrant shelter in the Bronx. So if you want to see the Trump doctrine, don't let them focus you on Project 2025. Just look up Agenda 47 and read what it has to say. In addition, go to Trump Vance, I think it's .com. Look at this, see the point. And that's the primary source you should take it from. Then make your own judgment based on either the mainstream media, whose ratings and viewership is going down, or the new alternative media. You already have your YouTube channels. A lot of people have their Substack, newsletter blasts, and things of that nature. Also be around the same community of either like-minded or opposing-minded individuals and get their opinions as well. Like, we don't all agree with everything on this panel, but we have the information, tools, resources to share ideas and let you, the viewer, be the judge at the end of the day.
All right. Well, we talk about viewing media that can give you good information, incredible information. We've been fed this whole election season with misdirection, misinformation, some truth, some half truths, and some just outlandish conversations. And today, the young lady who's the youngest press officer that's out there sharing had a first press conference today.
Caroline.
Yes, and kudos to her. I had an opportunity to watch the words, very articulate, bright young lady. One of the things that she did share is that they're holding 2 seats on the side for anybody who wants to come and be a part of the press and ask questions.
That's right.
Something that was totally different. If you have a quality social media program, or you are somebody who just do a podcaster, or anybody who's done credible work on the side, as opposed to just mainstream media, they're open up for you can get credentials that you can be in that room.
Wow.
So, and it's different than just having the historic networks in there. And even at that moment in time, I won't call the reporter's name out. When NBC had the opportunity to ask the question was asked in such a way to stir the pot, as opposed to how you get real questions to get real answers to help the government people. We have to be better at leaving the "I got you" moments alone in order to help the American people and help our country. You heard how the America First conversation. How does it play itself out in the world that you work every day?
It's an area of serious concern. Because I do teach predominantly Black students, but I do have a number of Southeast Indian students as well who are also very much concerned, not just for their safety, but their sanity, their mental and emotional health and well-being, which is indeed a topic of in serious and much needed conversation, because it does impact not only your academic performance, but that of your professional performance. as well. But this conversation about America First that, I'm having my students, because I always start off the class with current events, mental health, and all that great stuff, is more so how can you have a conversation about America First without realizing that America would not be America First had it not been for the very people that you've marginalized, and you've moved to the periphery of this vision. And these other people, these marginalized people, are the very people that look like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about America First, let's realize that the America First that is being dreamt of does not include you and I. It has a very America-centric perspective and look and aesthetic. And we see that in how the history is being rewritten and portrayed. How do we go from the Gulf of Mexico to now the Gulf of America?
Sounds great to me, don't you?
Yeah,
but then how do we go from, well, we don't want your kind here because we perceive you as a problem. It's not too far from Giuliani and his stop and frisk.
Well, we're going to stop right now before you frisk the next conversation, because we are at halftime of the 4. And so we got to take a quick break and let people on the station do what they do well. So we'll be right back on the 4, presented by King Talk Tuesdays, right after a message from Millennial TV News 24 and Good Neighbors.
All right.
Good Neighbors Community Outreach Agency provides programs that help community residents improve their lives and support their families. Are you in need of food, clothing, employment, or a home? We also provide immigration services and passport renewal.
Hi, I'm Pastor Glad.
And I'm Lady D.
We're here to serve you.
Need help? Ask us.
You can reach us by calling 718-652-3288 or visit us at gncdcny.org.
Welcome back to the 4, presented by King Talk Tuesdays. I'm your host, Andy King, the show with real views, real news, and real talk. King Talk Tuesdays airs every Tuesday, the 4 every other Tuesday at 7 p.m. live on Millennial TV News 24, as well as our Facebook and our YouTube channel. We also air at 9 p.m. on Optimal Channel 70 and Fios Channel 2136. And you know what I always say, right? People pay attention to people who participate. So tell a friend and tell a neighbor that we're on, and you can leave a message or send us an email at kingtalktuesdays@gmail.com for any thoughts, comments, or just a suggestion for an upcoming show. But one of the things that we do on King Talk and then in the 4, at this halftime, I always take a moment in time just to share a little something that the good Lord might have placed on my heart to talk about and just share about. And I just want to say to us all, part of our conversation tonight is about how do people be marginalized or not be marginalized. I ask everyone who's going through any emotional crisis because of election, do not so. For me, for real, true salvation, I look for the Most High in Christ, because I've learned, if you get in front of Christ, and I've done it before, you'll trip and fall, and concrete hurts. So let him carry you through those great times. Let him carry you through those trying times. Let him carry you through those dark moments, because through Christ, all things are possible. So I say to each and every one who are tuning in tonight, make sure in the essence of your neighborhood and your friends and your family, do something different, something spiritual, do something to open your mind and your body, but more importantly, your spirit. Our children are looking for our guidance, but we need to be guided by ourselves as adults. Organizations who are doing the wonderful work to serve people, look inside yourself and remember, as I always say, lack of funding doesn't mean lack of service. If you believe in the Most High in Christ and the higher power, he'll make a way to get you from day to day. So we're thankful and grateful for all who have been tuning in today. And remember, at the end of the day, prayer works. So say a prayer for yourself. Say a prayer for your family. Say a prayer for your community. Say a prayer for your friends. Say a prayer for your enemies. Say a prayer for your frenemies. Just say a prayer, because prayer does work. And we want to thank you again for being part of the 4 here on King Talk Tuesday. Let's jump back in, because these last 26 minutes are going to go faster than the wind blows on a winter day. So we just want to let you know that we're here with Mr. Dion Powell, Mr. Cat Conservative for himself. We have the great Dr. Bartley's in the house today. And we also have Queen Martin in the house. And of course, the man who's always calling it back, Mr. Hallback. So we thank you and welcome for all of them. But, we want to get into some things because executive orders came with a whole host of things. So right now, I just want to jump into right now, a touchy subject for many and some for others. The policy that has changed to make the United States a two-gender society. We know that there's been a lot of pushback, a lot of information that people didn't like in the last couple of years. There's been some emotions that have put people in different places, in different spaces, a lot of money that was spent. And currently, as we'll get into DEI, how much money has been pulled out of a number of organizations who funded and fueled some of these things. So let's talk about, you really need to talk, because I work with children all the time, and I've had a young family member who had the experience as a soccer player going into the girls' bathroom. And then there was a large man in there claiming to be a woman, called himself a woman. And when she ran to the principal to talk about it, the principal says, nothing I can do. Now, this was end of last year, but the rules of the game appeared to change. Would you care to talk about that, Mr. Hallback?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So my opinion on it is basically I don't want to send us back in times. We don't want to, trigger so much what do you call it, pandemonium that we cause a war. I think that making executive decisions, you have to be very careful on the ones that you make and what laws or rules you set forth with it. Okay, so we don't want to say, okay, well, it's only two genders, because that's not a fact, literally there is, but people don't identify as such, and we should have enough respect to say, okay, well, you don't identify as such, then this is a category for you. However, putting it in certain places, keeping it out of certain places, that's where the very comes in at. That's where the difference comes at. Okay, so schools, I do agree, it should not be in schools. That's just it's a touchy subject, because I don't want for the LGBT community to think that I'm against them in any type of way. However, I think that there should be bounds on how we teach our youth what's going on sexually with themselves. I think that's a conversation that should be had at home. And if the adults, the parents, don't know how to have these conversations, we or the government should put forth or spend money on creating programs to teach the adults how to have these personal conversations with their kids, because then that brings a bond in the house. And that's another topic that goes into this, is dysfunctional homes, right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole different topic, right? So, but as far as the two gender part, I feel like keeping it in proper perspective, as far as keeping it away from youth or kids who don't have any idea on what's going on that way, or they're not too sure, they're still being developed, they're still testing things. They should not be subjected to certain things or just certain situations. Mm-hmm. Now, completely banning it and keeping it from certain places, or keeping them from expressing themselves in a certain type of way, I think that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I think it's completely wrong, and it takes away the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, and it ostracizes their way of living, and I think that's unfair.
Doctor, I want the doctor to chime in right now, because you've been moving around the globe, and for many of us who say, in God we trust, talk a little bit about your thoughts on this.
That's a loaded, very loaded conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very loaded topic, because there are so many tentacles, and when you pull on one tentacle, it unravels something else. Yeah. And so the conversation about gender identity, I'm of the mindset like, look, I'm on the business that pays me. You do what fits you, because I can't presume or assume or take a walk in your shoes when I myself don't know. That is not a first person experience for myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I support you in whatever capacity that looks like, however you need me to show up, to be a friend, to be an ally, to help, help you navigate whatever it is, that you're going through, however it is that you want to identify. I mean, truthfully, I don't give a kitty. That's just not me. And right. Who am I to tell you what I presume you to be based off of what I perceive your gender to be. That's just like people who walking around assuming that every person who has melanin that's black. That's not how this works. Not every person that has, a touch of melanin is black. There's more variety and more to that understanding of what melanin is, what it does, who is perceived as black, so on and so forth. So I take a step back. But there are some very strong opinions about the use of bathrooms, the use of their participation in sports. And I, don't have children of my own, but I do have nieces and nephews. And I'm just like, I'm learning just as much as you are learning, because how I understood gender and sexuality was from a millennial mindset, and research, specifically social science research, was not that far advanced. And if it was in its infancy. It has since grown tenfold since then. So I am doing a lot of learning, relearning, and unlearning. So we're working together in this.
Okay. Lucille, talk to us, because, we say this topic can be a little touchy for some folks, but we did just have an election that the number of conversations that we're having, President Trump made his quotes, he made his statement, he said the things he was going to do, and now he is doing them. And he got a mandate from the people of America with the numbers that came in, wherever that was, whether it was safety or whether it was how do we make sure that those who want to be part of this country are part of this country the right way, or is it making sure that biological men are not playing softball or playing volleyball with biological women? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that as it pertains to the manner in which he's choosing to address these topics, it's causing a whole lot of uproar. But when we see the outcomes, when we see the response of all these, lawsuits, because people are not just accepting this, right? Mm-hmm. Just like with the topic of the LGBTQ community, people have been negatively impacted by not feeling that they were able to be who they are, by not being able to express themselves, from being discriminated against based on their status, within the LGBTQ community. So I think that since it is such a large topic as it pertains to each part of it, you have to have an individualized approach. If we're talking about children in bathrooms, I would say that in school settings, children need to use certain bathrooms and adults should use other bathrooms, right? And I think that as it pertains to their gender identity, their sexuality, they should have an opportunity to decide exactly what they want to do and what they want to be. And when we think about these changes, if you're watching President Trump, but feel like you might fall into that category, what does that mean for those children? Because a lot of people have resulted in self-harm or attempted or successfully, committed suicide. And the reality is that we could put the same attention on these topics and move the needle in a direction that's more supportive to the individuals and families, as opposed to further marginalizing people, because that's what it does. At the end of the day, when we meet each other, we don't ask, who are you sleeping with? That it's not my business. And right. So when it comes to these other matters, it shouldn't be something that grossly overshadows a situation where, as a country, we already had some other topics that we needed to be focusing on and needed to be moving things in a direction to really support each other's wellness, not only as individuals, but in terms of family systems. So I just think that it's unfortunate that, all of this time and attention is being rerouted in this way, because it's not toward the progress of us as a people, in my opinion.
Dion, you get the last word before we go to break.
Guess what, family? The man said boys are boys and girls are girls. But if you're a parent of the boy and or girl, you too should be a part of the conversation. And thanks to hopefully confirm Mrs. Linda McMahon of the newly reformed Department of Education, you'll be brought in with a concept called universal school choice to do just that. If you don't like it, put your child over here. If you do like it, you can put your child over there. And guess what? As a parent, you can say, I want to go to school where it's a boy or girl, or I want to go to alternative school, or just homeschool. Thank you.
Well, we all want to thank you all, but we got to take a break. And since we've been talking about children and youth and families putting it together, we want to take a break because we want to hear a word from an organization that's doing wonderful work with youth for over 2 decades here. And I want to thank all of the volunteers and the parents and everybody who's been part of this program. We'll be right back on The 4 after the message from the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program.
Yep.
The Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, YEP, is a youth organization that has served the Northeast Bronx for 17 years. During our tenure, we have provided recreational and educational forums that have nurtured the growth of many youth in the community. YEP has also serviced hundreds of youngsters around New York City. YEP's target audience is youth from the age of 11 to 18 with the goal of helping youth become productive adults. YEP provides young people with resources to explore leadership skills, community involvement, and self-development. YEP consists of weekly and bi-weekly informational sessions with guest speakers from professional, political, and entertainment arenas. Also, as a part of community involvement, YEP will host trips to a variety of venues for educational and recreational experiences. As we continue to partner with other local organizations and serve our community, we will strive to unite and develop the youth in our community. The mission of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program is building mind, body, and community.
Well, welcome back to the 5, keeping it live as we were 4 when we first opened the door, but we're here keeping it up right now. So want to thank, as we get through our last final segment, just want to get into a couple of things quickly in regards to, we were talking about some of Donald Trump's executive orders. Before we go into the last one that we have, I want to talk a little bit about the Tuskegee Airmen. There was a conversation that happened that pulled them out of the basic training video that was used to inspire, educate what the value of these airmen meant for not only war, but just for our story to get erased. Can you give us a little something of why you think this is happening, Doc?
Oh, absolutely, because you roll back DEI initiatives. And so technically when you roll those back, then you roll back, participating and educating about Black history and culture. And if it's not just, in this case, it's Black history and culture, but if it were another group, it may have been Hispanic, Chicano, Latino culture, or whoever, the other impacted population. Is this worrisome? Absolutely. But then I read an article that it was then rescinded after all the brouhaha and fallout because of it. And I was just like, well, rightfully so, because whose novel idea was it to remove it to begin with? Right. I was having the same conversation with my students about this. I went to Hampton. One of the Tuskegee Airmen was an alum of Hampton. Hampton is the mother school to Tuskegee University. Mm-hmm. So essentially, when you are trying to remove Tuskegee University's impact and part of their essence or part of their function in the story, you're essentially then removing us Hamptonians, and then it tends to reverberate and echo with other HBCUs. So of course we're going to have some qualms about it, because we know that predominantly white institutions were not admitting us, and hence why we created our own with the support of some white allies, because we cannot remove them from the history. But the Tuskegee Airmen is more than just a moment in history. It is very much a testament to how resilient, how powerful, how intelligent we really are. But there's this very whitewashed and problematic narrative that says, no, that we are other, that we are so less than, that we are incapable of doing, being, operating, seeing, doing, reading, writing, whatever it is. Mm-hmm, they have basically said that we cannot, and we continue to prove that we can, we will, and we will continue to do so.
I'm going to ask, and we'll put it on the table for you all before we wrap up with a city conversation. DEI, which everyone is fussing and crying about, and some people saying it makes sense. Far as the rollback of DEI and the protections it was allowing out there, I put out there for everyone, because we're having a real talk. The Black American has been a part of the makeup of this country. Definitely. The Black American has built this country. The Black American was part of this country along with our quote unquote, I say the tribe of Gad, but it's called the Indian brothers that are here on this landmass. So any conversation that has, when it talks about diversity and inclusion, I don't think they should actually be even included, because they're supposed to be a given. Because anytime you ask for something for Black people, then everybody else gets it, and then it gets muddied up. And then Black people get absolutely nothing out of the game. Right. So how do we have a conversation about DEI and say, wait, Blacks, you good? Because we know that you're just as much as valuable to this country as the so-called white man. How do we have a conversation with DEI and keep it real, what it actually is?
Yeah, I think it's furthering the agenda, just like the attack, right? With regard to affirmative action, it's furthering that agenda, and I think that I think Joyce's point, right? They're getting rid of our history or attempting to in all these ways, just like in Florida, right, where they've taken Black history out of their school systems and destroyed books. There's no reason to go that far to hide the truth unless you're trying to rewrite it to create a different narrative. And as it pertains to Black Americans, I think very much to your point, these different policies were in place to remediate the consequences of people who were both kidnapped and enslaved in this country and those descendants. All of the other people that chose to come to this country in terms of migration were able to benefit from a lot of the work done by the Black American community. And it's easy to try to cause confusion, like I said, Trump has done with all these other things by masking it this way. But the reality is that they have continued to blur those lines and change the wording, right? And creating things like, let's move more toward BIPOC, right? Everyone that's maybe not, male, Caucasian, then falls under it. And you just get one, but it takes those opportunities away from the Black Americans who not only fought for these changes, but also are being lost, right, in those spaces.
Can I add to that really quickly?
Please, you got 2 minutes before we go on to the next topic.
So very quickly, Lucy, thank you for saying that, because I just had a question on my pop quiz that says, Dr. Farley says that the success of other marginalized and other groups hinges on the success of Blacks. What we fight for, they then are the beneficiaries. So civil rights, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we fought tooth, nail, blood, sweat, tears, and everything else everybody else has benefited from. Now you want to rescind it because you realize that we're progressing. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, we fought for it. Now everybody else has that benefit. Affirmative action, we fought for it, but ironically, white women have been the direct beneficiaries of affirmative actions. That's controversial, and that's very much a conversation that's happening right now with the reversal of the affirmative action. So everybody has benefited from it other than us. Even with Brown versus Board of Education, we initially did benefit it for like 2.5 seconds, and then once affirmative action, once Brown versus Board of Education opened the floodgates to remove the racial barriers into predominantly white school districts, and all of a sudden, well, we're going to roll back on some of the provisions and some of the, not so much provisions, but the allowances that we've given Blacks. We'll allow everybody else to, to benefit. But then here's where you have the problems. We'll keep you in predominantly underfunded areas, which are tied to property values, which we purposely devalue, so that way you can't get a leg up. I mean, it's a very sick, cyclical system.
Well, that's what happens when you're in punishment for not following the Most High in Christ's words couple thousand years ago, but that's another conversation for another set of folks. But I want to end up in our last subject for tonight. We just want to get into, we hear our mayor, Eric Adams, has taken a little break due to health issues, but he also touted yesterday that he celebrated today that New York City has once again set another record for all-time high total of jobs in the city's history, with 4,770,981 total jobs, according to new data released by New York State Department of Labor. This is the 8th time in the Adams administration has broken an all-time jobs record since Mayor Adams entered office. He included also in this all-time high job list, it is an all-time private sector job record with 4,197,501. First, I want to say to you, the Honorable Eric Adams, however you're feeling, I pray for your health. I hope you get healed, whatever it is. I pray that you'll be okay health-wise, and may the Lord continue to watch over and protect you. But we talked about numbers earlier. Where do we get them from? We're talking about a growth of jobs. I'm glad that's a good thing that when somebody tell me a little bit more deeper, what kind of jobs that were in this report? Do we know where these jobs landed? Who received these jobs? Can you talk a little about, because I know you do work within the system sometimes. Going back, can you talk a little bit about this?
So honestly, I don't know where those jobs went. Who got those jobs? Whether it was immigrants, whether it was minorities or others. Only thing I've seen as far as job wise goes, it's been more funding going into different programs, which has been very helpful into hiring. But then we got to look at, are these jobs conducive? What type of jobs are we, are we building? And is it the jobs that we need in the city?
Right.
So
okay. Well, we're going to be wrapping up. So I want to just give each one of you a quick 30 seconds to give some final words, whether it's about these jobs that the city say that we have, or it's about DEI, or it's some other thing that we talked about tonight, whether it was Trump's position and being in power and being commander in chief. But I want to start with you, Queen Lucille.
Certainly. I think that it's just really important that we each take the onus to educate ourselves, not stick to one platform for the information, not just, take a look at something on social media and spread it. I think that there's a lot of power in the tongue, and it is important that we are conscious about what we are exposing ourselves, and we're responsible for making sure that it's a well-rounded perspective. I think that it's dangerous to just jump on these bandwagons and not really take the time to think about what's best and the way some of these quick-made decisions actually impact the communities that we live in. Because if you look around, we're the ones living in it, not Trump. Our community is the one being impacted by it. These individuals, whomever they might be, are here, and we need to create plans that incorporate wellness in all ways. I'm actually very happy Mayor Adams took the time to take care of himself, because that's something that's necessary, and it affects not only individuals and their families, but everyone around them.
Oh, God bless you. Doctor, 30 seconds.
To piggyback off of what Lucy said, please, people, read. Reading is not only for enjoyment, but it is very fundamental in these day and times. Not just one solitary source, because it aligns with your thought pattern, it aligns with your faith, your personal beliefs, your conviction, whatever it may be that is motivating you to, rely on one primary source. But please read, and read a breadth of information. I would also encourage you to read some fiction as well, because there is some truth in some of these fictional accounts of what the future is going to look like. I'm just going to leave it at this. Octavia Butler, The Parable of the Sower.
Oh, okay. Now, if you don't know, you're about to find out. Close us out, Dion. What you got for us?
One thing you have to say about President Trump, like him or not, he's authentic. Some people say that he has promises made and promises done across the board, like it or not. As you can see, there's some auto correction imbalances here, like with the Tuskegee situation, and also when he wanted to make it illegal for people that are born here to be citizens. But that's the fact. He says he's going to do something, he's going to do it, and he's proved it. Trump, 45, 47.
Well,
doesn't make it right, though. Doesn't make it right.
Well, we're going to continue a conversation. We'll come back again, but we have to wrap up. We thank our guests here who joined us tonight on the floor here, presented by King Talk Tuesdays. It was a nice spirit and more information to be gained. So do your own research, do your own reading, and take everybody other's truth with a grain of sand. Learn and read for yourself as well. But as we always do on King Talk Tuesdays, we end every night show with a scripture. Tonight's scripture reads from Mark 12:17, and Jesus answered, said unto them, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. If no one told you today, God loves you, and so do I. Andy King, and we are the four. God bless and have a good night, everybody.